You're listening to the Sokan Community Podcast. Your favorite source for gaming, film, and internet debate starts now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sokan Podcast. I'm your host, T, and with me are both Jace and Leo.
Hi, I'm Jace. Oh, crap. I meant to say Drayson. Jace Drayson.
And hello, I'm Leo.
We had a bit of a rough go of it this year, or this season, I guess. Well, okay. Rough year, also a rough season. We've kind of been in and out, but we did get all three of us back for the season finale. So, multitude of absences aside, how do you guys think the season's gone so far?
I mean, it was good. We did good. I thought we did really great. So far, it seems weird since we're on the finale because it makes it seem like there's more. But I guess whatever we say today is up to this point so far. Whatever. Good job, everyone. I think we did well. Good season.
I concur. Especially me, because I'm awesome and I've been fantastic. The rest of you have been pretty good. No, nothing. I'm not taking anything away from y'all. But I have been especially fantastic. I'm also really excited about this particular episode because we're talking about some really exciting stuff. I'm not always totally in tune with the stuff we're talking about because a lot of it's just outside my wheelhouse of fun. But tonight's it's my jam.
Honestly, I'm really excited. I pushed so that we could talk about Baldur's Gate. It was one of the topics I was super excited about, and it's on the list.
I mean, it's only a year out. Might as well talk about it now.
Okay, but now I can pretend that the 30 hours I've spent playing the game were research and not just me screwing around in my spare time. So.
That's how you know you love it. 20 hours of content. T has spent 30 hours in.
Counterpoint. I'm just really bad at the game.
So I wouldn't be able to last for many hours if I wasn't good at something. If I died 2 or 3 times, I'm out.
But anyway, we do have other things to talk about this evening, including the seasons of 2 different shows. Some very different in tone ones, but ones that we all seem to be pretty excited about. We're also going to be talking about The Boys, season 2, and the end of Schitt's Creek.
Do you have to bleep Schitt's Creek whenever we say Schitt's Creek? It'd be funny.
Because we're gonna say Schitt's Creek a lot,
right? It's not a bad word. We get to keep saying shit because shit in Schitt's Creek is someone's name.
It's spelled weird, so it makes it okay.
There's a C and a second T in it, and that's what makes it okay.
Schitt's Creek.
All right. Well, if you haven't watched either of these, the finale of Schitt's Creek or season 2 of The Boys, or if you're trying to go completely blind into Baldur's Gate 3, spoilers abound in the content to follow. Way back in February, Larian Studios, developers of the Divinity franchise, released an official cinematic trailer for the long-awaited third title to the D&D solo game that had fans raving, Baldur's Gate. It's been pretty much 20 years since the last Baldur's Gate title, and a lot of gamers are skeptical about the content being released, especially since the game technically isn't actually out yet. On October 6th of this year, Larian Studios put up the first chapter of Baldur's Gate 3 as an alpha test, but the full game isn't actually released yet. That said, you can buy and play the alpha version of the first chapter right now on Steam, Stadia, and GOG.com, but is it fair to pay a AAA price for just the alpha of a full game? Especially when that game is an RPG focused on story building, and there's not a whole lot you can do in one act.
I think this to me isn't taking advantage of people. This to me is a developer putting out an incomplete game with full knowledge to everyone that this is an incomplete game, and a lot of people stepping in and choosing to basically pre-purchase and beta test this game for them. And I don't have any problem with it. I'm not going to do it, but I don't have a problem with a company offering it and other people doing it.
I'm not going to do it either, and I think that I kind of do have a problem with it. It's not necessarily a moral problem. I don't think it's shady business practices. I mean, they were very forthcoming about what was going on, so people are making the choice to do what they want to do. But I do hate, just on principle, that we're in a place in the video game zeitgeist culture, whatever you want to call it, that putting out an unfinished game for money is pretty standard practice. The early access games in general piss me off because I don't necessarily, I mean, I get it. I get Kickstarters way better. Like if you see an idea, a notion, you want to invest and fund the development, that's great. And this is, I guess, a distinction that's just a very slight shade different. But to me, I'm not happy myself for sure. I've already said I'm not gonna do it, but I just don't like that we're at that place now where developers feel okay with putting something out that's not done and saying, pay me for something that's not done and then I'll finish it for you. I just don't like it.
Well, what's different in this case then to you than like a Kickstarter?
A Kickstarter is more of say a investment opportunity, perhaps. I mean, obviously the kickback you get for your investment is a game that you want to play, and part of it is certainly a distinction that is not, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but it does irritate. It's the difference between selling an idea, selling, hey, I want to develop this, I don't have the money funds to do it, where that's not where we're at. I think that when a big AAA company or even a AA or A company does it, it's really not about funding somebody's idea, which is kind of the premise behind Kickstarter. It's really more, we don't want to put our company at great risk developing this, so you need to fund it alongside of us. And I just don't like that attitude or that culture that developers have. It's prevalent. It's everywhere. I mean, how many early access games are on Steam right now? But on principle, I won't buy an early access game. I just don't care for it.
That's fair. I tend to avoid early access games as well, mostly for just the propensity of undelivered promises and abandonware. Like I'm not interested in, funding a developer that isn't going to finish a product that I'm interested in. But Larian seems like they're not quite AAA, but they're not an untested developer. So I don't know. I kind of see them as an in-between. I think I would be angry about this if this was, let's say, BioWare developing this Baldur's Gate, because they have attained that. I don't know. I'm not even sure what AAA means. Like, how do you, like, what goalposts do you have to pass to get to AAA? I don't know. But BioWare seems to be one of the big companies now, and I would dislike this, I think, if BioWare was doing it. But because it's not BioWare, I don't know, maybe I'm giving them a pass, but this seems like a pre-order with a benefit, like with the added bonus of being able to play early.
Yeah, and I will say too, I mean, I see your point. I recognize it. It's fair. I don't like to beta test either. So there have been times over my life where I didn't pay Schitt's Creek, where I didn't pay anything, and I still wouldn't do it. I have, and I've learned that I hate it. I don't like to test people's games. It's just not fun for me, even if they let me do it for free. And in this situation, it feels like, or in these situations, I don't want to put it all on Larian because they didn't come up with this. This is ongoing, and it's really the bigger problem, that much more than I have with Larian specifically. But I don't feel good about paying to help them test their game. Like, why don't you pay me if I'm going to be being a tester for your game?
Right. I agree with you, and I think our perspective is born of decades of gaming.
Yeah, 100%. We're significantly older.
But
Listen, guys, this game has been in development almost as long as I've been alive.
but we've
Ouch.
yeah. Truth be told, though, like we've seen this happen a lot, and I have volunteered to beta test games in the past, and I'm in the same spot. I'm tired of doing it. However, like there are a lot of gamers that are not as seasoned and jaded as I am.
No, or me. I mean, honestly, if you see those beta tests coming out, people jump all over them, and they're clamoring for beta keys. And I don't want to. Literally
Same.
don't want to.
Yeah. I remember a time when I thought, oh, I could be a beta tester and gaming companies will pay me. And oh man.
And if they
that
pay me, I'm
never
down. Hell yeah.
materialized.
So it is worth noting that those who have purchased the alpha access to the game will still get the full game at its actual release. Do you feel that this is any different from pre-ordering with advanced access?
If you're, in a way, if you're testing the game and providing feedback for them to make the game better, it's a little different than just having advanced access. Again, we're talking about semantics here, because when you have early access to a game, in my opinion, they're using you to stress test their server or stress test their build, whatever. There's not a lot of light between those two things to squeeze through, and I get that. But, I mean, here's my thing. If I pay for Baldur's Gate right now, I want to play Baldur's Gate right now. And if I want to play Baldur's Gate right now, I want to do it all. I don't want to just get through a chapter or an act and then have to sit for months. I'll tell you something, in a few months from now, I'm going to be on something else and I won't remember, and then I'll have to start over anyway because my mind has already forgotten the whole intricacies of the story. I want to buy a game and then play it all the way through. It's the same way I felt about, what's that game where you fall in the water and you have to build a spaceship to get off the planet? You know that game? Subnautica, that's it. Like that game, it was intriguing to me from the whole time it was being developed, but it was in early access forever. I never bought the thing. I waited until they said, okay, the game is now complete. I bought it, I played it, and I loved it. That's how I want to play a game, is just log in or sign in, whatever you do, and play it through and then kind of pack it up and put it away.
Yeah, I do think I agree that the developers are certainly, I don't know, using, with quotes around it, the quote early access buyers of the game. They are beta testers, or alpha testers, for lack of a better term. But I think the thing that forgives it in my head is that nobody is being taken for a ride. Everyone involved in this transaction knows what they're doing. And the players who are, quote, pre-ordering and, quote, testing this game for Larian are in the know. Like there's no mystery around it. Nobody misled anyone. This was clear from the very beginning. And that, to me, it relieves a lot of what would be some potential resentment or some potential issue. Like I said, I'm totally with you, Jace. I'm not gonna, quote, pre-order this. I'm not gonna pay, what is it, $60 to beta test this game, because I'm in the same boat. Perhaps it is, again, our advanced years, but I will not remember a year from now when this game actually comes out. I'm not going to remember chapter 1 that I did. I mean, there's no way.
Technically, you'd have to start over anyway because they're going to wipe the pre-access saves.
Ah, well, good for them.
When the game comes out, so you can't break your way through the game with
that's good. Save. Well, and the truth is some fundamental things are likely to change as well. So that only makes sense. And I was in a previous episode, I was doing a little bit of research for another game, and it was actually really interesting listening to the developers talk about how games are developed and how unfair it is for them to put out even like a year early, demos of the game, because they're saying like fundamental aspects of this are going to change, because as they play the game, like the understanding of what mechanics might be OP, what mechanics might be underpowered, what just gameplay elements just don't fit, are going to have to be changed, and they're going to wipe everything, and it just changes even some fundamental aspects of games that people like. So I don't know how wise it was doing this, but if it is successful for Larian to do this, I think we can expect more of it.
It's just what other industry on the planet can you think where this would be an okay thing? If you buy a book and you just get the first couple chapters that might change later and the plot might change. If you buy a ticket to a movie and this is before we've done post-production, so there's no effects, but you get to see the story before anybody else. If you buy a bicycle, and you just get one wheel and no handlebars.
Hold on, David. Online publishing. I'd actually heard that there are writers who will put out the first couple chapters in order to try and garner interest and to see if it's something that people are willing to pay for, and then people will pre-buy the rest of the book for that writer.
That's what focus groups are for. I mean, I guess if you want to put
that's kind of what this
groups
is,
into
though,
the
right?
ether, but I just think that's lame. If get a publisher, there are publishing companies that or put out a product and sell a product. I just don't like paying for someone else to develop something. No, develop it first and then you may have my money. It's a crotchety old man way to be, but it's how I am. I will say, let me say this. One of the reasons is because I have gotten burned in my life. I will say 2 words and then we may move on. Star Citizen.
All right. Well, let's talk about story. So the story so far, as we've gotten from the opening cinematic, is that the Mind Flayers, which are also known as Lithids, are back and are stealing people to turn them into more Mind Flayers. You know, as one does. Meanwhile, the Githyanki are running around riding dragons, and it seems like everyone else is just kind of caught in the crossfire. What kind of story are you expecting to see play out here?
First of all, let me say the opening cinematic is awesome. It was engaging, and there were little moments where you're like, ooh, what was that about? What does that mean? And how does that relate to what I'm seeing? Like you see the Mind Flayer as he's after he put the little tadpole thing in that poor Githyanki lady's eye, and then he puts it in your character's eye. He like floats back out and he sees a dead Mind Flayer on the floor, and then he like kind of closes his eyes briefly and keeps going. Like, what was that? What's that about? Like, that's got to be something. Like, there's so many little things in this that makes me think this is going to be an awesome Baldur's Gate story, which I'm really excited about. The Githyanki are also a fascinating race. Previously enslaved by Mind Flayers, developed a resistance to their psionic, or not psionic, but their like mind control powers, and are now riding dragons to fight them. Oh, fascinating. I suspect we're going to see a number of different factions all fighting for control of something, and it's all going down in Baldur's Gate, and your player is at the center of it. And if it is Baldur's Gate style, you will get to choose a faction or potentially multiple factions to side with against the others and help guide the direction of the world, which I'm stoked.
I just want another Messiah story. I like the old school, you're the chosen one, savior of the world type tales. I know it's tropey, I know it's cliche, but I like it. I will also agree that the opening cinematic was pretty BA. Just really, really fun to watch and engaging. I am very excited to play the game, and maybe part of my irritation with prepaying for an alpha test is because I just want to pay for it and play it. I want to get to the story. I want to see how it will unfold and how deep it'll go. And in terms of playstyle, it's like Original Sin 2, which I very much loved playing. I just want to play it. I'm also very excited about the story and a fan of the franchise.
I'm a fan of the franchise, and in addition to that, I'm a fan of the developer, Larian Studios. Divinity Original Sin 2. I flaked on the name. Jace and I and a couple of friends have actually played that co-op and have played it online together. And not only is it just an amazing game with the story, but it's also really good mechanically.
Yes.
Like using the environment to your advantage, and then the addition of multiplayer in a game like that, like that's amazing. And they're only going to do better because they've learned important lessons, and hopefully they've cut out the fat that was, the bad stuff about DOS and DOS 2.
Oh, DOS. I'm so old, I thought you meant like DOS, the computer language. Jeez Louise, I was not with you. I want to know what that giant space squid that comes down and wrecks the town is. Is that, I'm not real knowledgeable about D&D lore at all. It's just, I don't know much about it beyond what I have played in a couple of different games. But is that something that we know about, that giant space squid?
Yeah, it's like a Mind Flayer kind of standard ship. It's
called a nautiloid.
Nautiloid, yeah. And they use their powers like to be able to teleport them and to even like interdimensionally travel with them. Like you kind of see that in the trailer.
Well, I'm a big fan of the cinematic. I want to play the game. Oh, I will say too, as a huge Game of Thrones fan, dragon riding. I mean, I've wanted a game where you can ride dragons. I hope that we get to have a dragon. I don't know how that would work in like a
You have an
top
obsession.
Down. I do. I really do. Like dragon riding.
Okay, but it's a reasonable one.
It's reasonable. If I could be in any universe. Anyways, moving on.
But yeah, there is a lot about the story that is still unfolding, and I'm sure there's plenty of different side quests and things that we haven't even had a chance to discover yet. Overall, the generalized plot, from what little bit I've been able to glean, because again, I've been mostly running around figuring out what I can do with the environment and getting myself stuck in the Underdark, is that your character is one of several who were abducted by this Illithid mind flayer. You are implanted with a tadpole, which is the thing that they put in your eye. And usually what happens is that tadpole begins a change that turns that person into a mind flayer. And it's like described as this very horrible process that takes place over the span of several days, etc.
Yeah, it eats your brain.
And then you join the Illithid hive mind, and that's like...
Ooh, like the Borg?
Yeah, it's like how they reproduce. And then, you get like face tentacles and stuff, and you eat brains.
That's very like the Borg. So it's like the nanites that, yeah.
Yeah. And so your character was just kind of going about their day, got kidnapped, now there's a tadpole in their eye, and you somehow survive the crashing of the Nautiloid ship, and you find out that there are other people like you, and you go, oh no, we don't want to become evil mind flayers, we need a healer. Quick, to Baldur's Gate. Except of course it's not that easy. But it also turns out that you have more time than you realized, because for whatever reason, your tadpole isn't eating your brain. In fact, it seems to be giving you an advantage, allowing you to manipulate the minds of those around you.
Chosen one.
It definitely seems to be coming with a cost, and it has some other hidden side benefits that are showing up in your companions. And you're also starting to hear from this person called the Absolute.
I hope it's not a Chosen One story. I'm so averse to that. I want to be normal, and you rise to the occasion.
I want to be a chosen one, and I want to ride a dragon. I wanted to ride a dragon in Elder Scrolls Online, but Leah wouldn't let me.
I just want to be a purple tiefling. And this game is letting me do that.
The lore lets T do that, and the lore forbids Caedmon from having ridden a dragon.
It could happen.
Alright. Baldur's Gate 3's full release has not yet been announced, though they have estimated it'll be about a year at least before the final launch. But a lot of our fellow Sokanites are pretty hesitant to pay retail prices until everything is put together and out there. For those of you who have picked up the alpha, shoot us a tweet at Sokan Gaming and let us know how you're enjoying it so far. For example, have you fallen into the same trap that so many of the alpha players have and just recreated the basic Vault Dweller? Or have you made something a little more interesting, like a purple tiefling? For those of you waiting, well, you'll have plenty of time to consider how best to assemble your party. Let's venture forth. Now let's talk about the show that's been sweeping Canadian airwaves for 6 years strong, Schitt's Creek. No need to check your explicit rating, that's SCHITT Schitt, which is the name of a character, Roland Schitt. Yeah, it's that kind of show. Eugene Levy of 80s comedy fame and his son Dan Levy created the show that aired in 2015 on CBC, and it just this year wrapped up its 6th and final season. Spoilers ahead, if you haven't seen the show yet, we strongly recommend it. Schitt's Creek ended with something a lot of shows these days don't get. Mostly because most ongoing shows right now have devolved into just being about getting money out of it, but I digress. It got a happy ending. How do you guys feel about the heartwarming presence the show has had in an otherwise drama-ridden television market lately?
I mean, I feel good about it. I feel great. I love Schitt's Creek. The whole point of the show, when you watch the creators talk about it, the whole point of the show is joy, and just to inject joy into the world. And I really feel like that's what that show does. So I feel good about it. I feel good about the happy ending. There was some bittersweetness to the ending. It's not like everything got perfectly tied up with a bow. There was a little bit of pain and hurt at the end, which I think is good when you're ending a show. You want it to feel, you want to have that sense of completion, but also, if it's too happy, it just gives you a saccharine bad taste in your mouth. And this, I thought, struck a good balance between a happy ending and a little bit of reality to push people forward, so that we're not, in our heads, they're not just all still hanging out at Cafe Tropical. They've all moved on. They've got lives now, and they're living them.
It's like when the robots tried to make a perfect matrix for humanity to live in. We rejected it because it was too happy, and we didn't believe it. So Schitt's Creek was actually recommended to me by a couple of nerds in this podcast, and I thought, okay, I'll give it a shot. And I fell in love with it in the first episode and kept watching it. And I wanted to finish the series before we did this podcast, because I knew we were going to talk about it. It's too much of a cultural phenomenon. It's too much of a, I don't know. We've got too many fans to not have it be part of the show. But what happened was, my wife saw me watching it and was like, "Ooh, what's that?" So I told her, and she was like, "Oh, I'd be interested." And so she caught up to where I was. And then both my daughters were also interested in watching it. And it became family night for us to watch Schitt's Creek of all shows. In fact, my youngest is watching the last episode my wife and I watched right now as we're recording this episode. So I have enjoyed the joy of the show, and have it has been a wonderful distraction from some of the realities we're facing now, as well as we're going to be talking about The Boys, and it is so polar opposite of The Boys in terms of just being heartwarming and
yeah,
joyful.
You couldn't get much different.
No. And I'm enjoying watching it with my family. Like, it's so good. I dig it.
I have said this multiple times. No, I'm notorious for saying it's my favorite. Whatever the last thing I have done or touched or eaten, I say it's my favorite, and people make fun of me for it. But I think that this, because of the happiness and the joy and the good and the looking forward to the final season, I think this might be my favorite show Not necessarily the best story or the best written, even though it is very well written. It just probably, in terms of just a good feeling, might be my favorite show that I've ever watched.
Let me say, I don't say this is my favorite a lot. And this might be one of my favorite shows because I think also, yes, it's heartwarming, but it is so well written. Every line has usually two meanings to it, and intentionally two meanings. Like everything is, it's just so witty and it's so sharp. It's not TV you find often, and especially you don't find that is so, I don't know, like it. Like so many talented and creative people have been a part of it to make it the success that it is. Other properties need to take note. Like this is how this stuff is done.
Another shocking thing about it is the sitcoms have a tendency to caricaturize their characters. So you start out with Joey being mildly dumb at the first season of Friends, and by the end he's just a blithering moron who doesn't know how to tie his own shoes. They just get so far and above where they started. Now this show's not as long running as something like Friends. It only has 6 seasons rather than 10. But what I found remarkable was these characters started out pretty outlandish, but they were somehow at the same time very grounded humans. You could feel the humanity, even though they kind of started in almost a caricature phase. And it was just so well done. It didn't take you out of the show or pull you out of the moment and think, I don't think so. It really felt human and genuine.
I think the most remarkable part about that, though, is that the characters were so far away from what would be a typical audience member, like these billionaires, like who've been so detached from humanity. Yet, I still found them relatable. Like it was weird. It's so well done.
Sitcom endings tend to be divisive in fan bases. Do you guys feel satisfied with the ending that you got?
I do, yes. I did spoil. I read ahead, and I've got the last episode, and I watched like even the wrapping up video on Netflix that our producer Sil recommended. Who, by the way, when he said he watched it, I think he used the term "it broke him," and I thought, ugh. Like you get too attached to your TV shows. And then I watched it and I think I teared up like 3 times.
Yeah. No, when me and Nathan watched that kind of whatever that is, that wrap up show on Netflix about it, and we were both just sobbing messes.
Yeah. It's so good. I retract my my judgment. Because it was very good.
I feel like I just have to plug in here. Like we all know Leo, right? I kind of feel like we're in the final scene of The Grinch where his heart grew 3 sizes that day.
Nope.
I think so. I see it beating big in your chest.
Nonsense. I saw media that I liked. That's all. I thought the ending was good. In fact, the show had a story to tell, and it told it, and I love it when shows do that. It's when shows do the opposite, and they realize they're popular, and so they tack on nonsense just to extend the story that I take issue with. This, it was perfectly done. There was a story to tell. The characters got their growth without fundamentally changing them, and then we got the conclusion that wasn't a, decisive conclusion. Everybody kind of like they have their lives to live now, and I don't know, that it's so well done. I loved it.
To me, and I'm gonna try not to get too terribly deep here, but what I loved about the ending was that it really was not at all the ending. It really was the beginning of those characters' lives. They had this period of time in Schitt's Creek that they sort of cocooned, and these broken, disparate, unconnected, kind of calloused humans grew and got better. Now, as he said, they did not fundamentally change, which I don't know how they did that. They still are just as cynical in some ways and above it in some ways, but so remarkably human. But then at the end of the show, they're able to go out and now really live a life as families do, because you don't always stay with your family. You don't always stay in your mom and dad's house. You go off and you do your thing. Everybody has a life now, whereas they were kind of stunted before. In the backstory of the show, they've all got launching pads now, which is I can't, even though in some ways you don't want the crew to break up. You want everybody to stay together forever, because that's the essence of the show, right? They're not all together anymore at the end of the series, but that's great, because that's how humans are supposed to do.
Yeah, the kids are supposed to go out and make their own lives, and that's what we see. That's ideal.
But even though they're separate, they're more connected to each other than they ever have been in their lives. Even in that growing
For sure.
apart, that departure from the nest.
I think even like their ability to say "I love you" to each other.
Yeah.
Like that was really touching. Like they couldn't do it at first, and then as they grew through the seasons, like it became normal for them. That was something.
It's impossible to talk about Schitt's Creek without talking about representation. Between Catherine O'Hara's Moira Rose becoming a gay icon and Dan Levy and Noah Reed's David and Patrick, respectively, having a gay marriage in the finale, the show is riddled with LGBTQ plus friendly material. Do you think the series did as good a job of representing without making it feel like a lesson, as Levy put it?
Yeah. So one of the, I don't know how to say all of this without being incredibly controversial or putting people off, but one of the problems with my community, the LGBTQ plus community, is the segregation that we have continued to perpetuate. Now I understand why it happened. I understand the history of, Stonewall, and I get it. There's people insulate when they're afraid to be hurt, but in some ways it makes it difficult then to reintegrate, because now, there's a lot more. I just read a statistic that like 70% of the United States is all for gay marriage now, which is huge. That's like in my lifetime, that number has flip-flopped from the other way. But if you just kind of inject representatives of cultures into normal everyday life, to me, that is the ideal. It shouldn't be a big deal that someone is different or gay or, a different race. They should just be able to come into any community and live alongside without there having to be commentary, without there having to be judgment, without there having to be justification. Just all exist, kind of coexist together. And really, that was Dan's vision. He didn't want there to be. In the universe of Schitt's Creek, he specifically decided not to allow homophobia to exist. It's not even there. It's not even in the lexicon. So they don't have gay characters that have to deal with that same kind of tropey, oh God, somebody got AIDS, oh God, my parents disowned me, oh God, I have to come out. Like, there's not really a whole lot of that stuff. Now, there's a little bit of a coming out story, but it's not like anyone you've ever seen, because no, that's not at all what we're upset about. No, you're missing the point. So yes, he did probably, in my opinion, the best, and I've seen a lot of gay media, a lot. He probably did the best job of anyone I've ever seen doing it without making it preachy and without making it feel like, I'm putting a big pink sticker on this guy's forehead so that everybody knows that there's a gay guy present.
Let me say, before I get into this, I've probably seen less gay media than Jace has. Clothed or unclothed, whatever. This is also, as has been said a number of times, we've talked about things. This is outside my wheelhouse. This is not my community. This is not anything I've ever had to deal with. However, I agree 100% with Dan Levy. When he talked about, when I watched that Netflix, after the series special, and he talked about the fact that This is about representation without making it feel like a lesson, or without making it preachy, or without making it heavy-handed, because those things have a tendency to turn people off. Those things have a tendency to make people resistant to whatever the message is you're trying to get out. And I think Schitt's Creek is one of the best examples I've ever seen of simply making the fact that a character or multiple characters are gay or are bisexual or are pansexual or are, you know, in the LGBTQ. I don't know all the letters.
Well, we add one every couple months, so you have to make sure to make the meetings or you don't get to vote.
I've never been to one of them, so I'm unfortunately way out of the loop.
You have to pay attention to the agenda.
Okay, I apologize. I count on Jace to fill me in on the letters. But the whole idea that it's simply an aspect of life as opposed to the defining element of it, that's what I liked the most. David is one of my favorite characters in Schitt's Creek, and he is more than a pansexual. Like, there's so much more to him. That was just an element of who he was. And that's what I liked the most about it, is that he was more than that. And that normalized the fact that he was pansexual. And that, I think, is how that message is best expressed to the masses, especially to masses like me, because I'm not in a club. And so normalizing it means just making it a normal aspect of a person's reality. I've got all kinds of aspects to me, and that is just one aspect of David, the character. Like, that's how it's done. It was brilliantly done.
Final question. Which one was your favorite character and why?
I thought about this a lot. I wanted to say David, but I think David is a remarkably popular character, and so I wanted to go against the grain, and I chose Patrick. Patrick, who ends up marrying David, is my favorite character thus far. I haven't finished all 6 seasons, however, I have gotten past the point where David kisses Patrick and they develop a relationship. And Patrick thus far has been a character that is witty and sarcastic, and I absolutely love how uncomfortable he makes David regularly.
It's so good. And that never stops. It never stops.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. And I think my favorite part is when David kisses him and Patrick is like, thank you for doing that, because I wouldn't have. And like, I had these feelings, I didn't know what to do with them, and like, he's just a really thorough character. And he's not, I've joked about the fact that I have broken gaydar. I can never, I don't know. I can never tell. Patrick didn't give a gay vibe to me. And the fact that, I don't know if he's bi, who knows? I don't know if that gets talked about later or whatever, but he's a non-stereotypical, very well-rounded and fascinatingly witty character, and I like him a lot.
And so kind. He is so kind. I have a little bit of a hard heart towards him because I'm about 95% convinced my husband would leave me for Patrick. So I can't I can't like him too much.
I mean, my wife might leave me for him too.
Yeah, he's something else. But I'm really, really torn on who my favorite character is. It is tough because every character is just so engaging. Like, I mean, it's hard. I don't know. I have to give an honorable mention to Eugene Levy's Johnny Rose, just because I don't think there's a human being on the planet who can give just a deadpan, hot face, arched eyebrow,
Totally.
like
Totally.
mortified reaction without a word, without a sound. There's just very few actors. B. Arthur was another one who could do it. You knew exactly what the hell is going on in her face, and she would
Yeah.
just freeze and look. And
I-
he can do that unbelievably well.
I have to interrupt, and I apologize deeply. I did not know Dan Levy was Eugene Levy's son. And I made a comment to my wife. I was like, it's fascinating that they found an actor that had the same eyebrows to play Johnny's son. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. But I'm gonna just be the cliche and say that Moira's my favorite. She is the newest and proudest member of the Gay Icon Club, and she's knocked Gaga off the number one seat. And we've all voted, and Moira Rose is the new improved gay icon for this 2020 year. So I just have to say Catherine O'Hara is Moira Rose. I know it's cliche, and I know she's over the top, but literally, we quote her around my house. She's just got the best lines. And Catherine O'Hara is hilarious anyway. I have to say her baby. Yeah, I know she's too much.
What is it about Moira Rose?
I don't know how we pick our icons, but it's really strange. Like, this is a phenomenon. We don't even, I joke about meetings. We don't really have meetings, but we somehow all know when one is, even if you grew up in South Texas like I did without being a part of a gay culture, having a gay neighborhood, anything, you still gravitate towards these iconic, usually women, divas. Like Karen Walker was one, Beyonce, like, it's weird. Olivia Newton-John from back in the day, we somehow just all know she's our queen.
We all
It's
know.
like bees. It's like we're bees.
You've selected your queens.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All 6 seasons of Schitt's Creek are currently available on Netflix, as well as a short documentary on the final season. If you're open to heartwarming stories mixed with plenty of comedy and a little bit of some classic sitcom drama, you would love this show. Whether you like the red wine, the white wine, or both. Ever since that first episode dropped on Amazon Prime Video back in July of 2019, The Boys has been a huge hit with comic book fans everywhere. Originally an anti-superhero graphic novel series from 2006, The Boys is all about the conglomeration and corporation building of superhero franchises, as well as the evils within all men who hold power. Season 2 recently wrapped up, and we're here to talk about all the nasty, mind-blowing action. Literally. In the finale of Season 2, we saw Ryan, Homelander and Becca's son, basically annihilated Stormfront, the Nazi superhero that was taking over the Seven, leaving Homelander in a fragile mental state. Well, more fragile than it was before. If that weren't enough, it was revealed that a congresswoman, posing as a human, is actually a soup that can literally make people's heads explode. How do you think all of this, tied with the boys themselves being separated, will lead into Season 3?
I am stoked for Season 3. Let me say, for the record, there aren't a whole lot of shows that I'm excited about and I'm looking forward to. And The Boys Season 3, I am. Season 1 was awesome, and there was a part of me that thought, oh, maybe it was an anomaly, and Season 2 will be garbage. And then I saw Season 2, and it was glorious. So I am really excited for Season 3. I think, obviously, something's going to happen to bring the boys back together, and they're going to go back after Soups, and I can't wait.
They're gonna have to refill the roster of the Seven, because the Seven is obviously missing a member or two. So we'll get a couple of new superheroes, I think, in Season 3, obviously. In fact, I think that we have confirmation that dude from Supernatural is going to be on Season 3, if I'm not mistaken. So
Soldier Boy.
Yeah. Soldier Boy. obviously I think our big bad now is going to be the Congresswoman soup, whereas Stormfront was kind of our big bad last season. But the big bad really isn't individual characters in The Boys. The big bad is really more of the overmind, the corporatism, and almost even the big bad is the culture that puts these superheroes on a pedestal when they're just such horrible human beings, horrible people. So I imagine that season 3 is going to be just a deeper exploration of that. Maybe now we've been looking at corporatism a lot, and maybe now we'll kind of move on to a government bashing season where the government is in on the heinousness, because the theme is power corrupts, corporate power corrupts, but too, government power corrupts as well.
Faux show.
Without getting into too much detail, the story already appears to have diverged somewhat from the comics it's based on, particularly with one of the soups of the Seven, Black Noir. In the comics, he has a much more convoluted and very messy backstory, but in the show, he got taken out by an almond joy. He's not dead, but he is in very, very bad shape, reminding us all just how very dastardly allergies can be. Purely speculation, but given that the graphic novel has more story elements drawn from early comics, stuff like cloning and nobody ever staying dead for long, do you think the show shying away from stuff like that is actually doing a better job of parodying comic book stories? Or should they be sticking closer to the original material?
I don't think that they need to stick close to the original material. I think that they need to allow this medium, this iteration, to be what it is, and they're doing a good job of it. So if they veer off that course, I think that they get in danger of doing something that wouldn't work, where what they're doing really is working. I will be honest, I do not and have not ever followed the graphic novels, the comic books. It's just I haven't. This isn't my kind of deal. I'm gonna be honest here. The Boys is not my kind of show. I like it. I enjoy it, but it's freaking diabolical. I think they use that word.
Diabolical.
They use that word to market the show. It is a lot for me to watch. I can't watch multiple episodes in a row because it really does. It makes me feel like it's just flooding my senses a little bit. But no, I don't think they should try to get into the graphic novel material other than using it for inspiration because of how well it's going. And I think that the creators and showrunners have an idea and it's working, so they need to stick to their idea.
So the character Black Noir was, I think, a rather fascinating one in that he was a clone of Homelander who had all of Homelander's abilities, but was supposed to keep that to himself until the day came when they needed to take Homelander out, because let's be honest, that dude is a loose cannon.
Twisted.
Yeah. Vought obviously needs some leverage over Homelander, and as the quote Superman of that universe, there's nobody else who can stand up to him. So the idea of some kind of, plan was important. In the show, though, he has a kid. And I don't know if that was a part of the comics, but they've changed Black Noir, I think, in an effort to allow this other element, this child of Homelander. And now, Homelander's kid, Ryan, is the contingency plan. Like, Ryan is the thing Vought now has to hold over Homelander, because it's ultimately, it's not the only thing he cares about, but it is one of the few things he cares about. His public image is probably the only other thing he cares about. So Vought needs that kind of contingency plan. I went off topic. Keeping it directly related to the comics, I think, is a bad idea, but I do think at least having some connection is important. character backstories, character links, and even like how someone became a soup versus just a normal person. I think those things are important. I've heard a lot of theories and read a lot of rants about how this character was changed, or this character might be this character, or whatever. And I do think that stuff matters, because your source material is important. Your source material is the thing that motivated this creation. So I do think honoring that to some degree is important. But if you mimic it, you make the show predictable, and that makes the show not as much fun to watch.
A major element of this show, as we mentioned earlier, is the mental states of the characters. The entire premise starts because of Billy Butcher and company's desire for vengeance. A-Train killing Robin, Billy's belief that Homelander killed his wife Becca, Lamplighter's torching of Mallory's grandchildren, and more are all signs of how violence begets more violence, a never-ending cycle. With Butcher finding out Becca was alive, and then having to watch her die for real right in front of him, do you think the fact he protected Ryan and then walked away from Mallory is a sign of evolution? Or do you think he's going to fall back into his classic role of kill them all?
100% kill them all.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think Butcher is Butcher. I think that he was who he was not because of Becca's first supposed death. I think they gave us plenty of backstory of his childhood and how his father was, and like there's a lot of brokenness inside poor Butcher for him to carry on with that attitude of kill them all. I don't know that he'll be redeemed in that way. I don't think we're going to have a different character with a new philosophy on how to deal with the world.
I think Billy Butcher is, first of all, I love the name, partly because, that's my name. But he's a fascinating character in his single-minded ness. He demonstrates certain aspects of humanity, but they are often revealed to be self-serving. And the people who want to believe in his humanity are often disappointed, with the exception of his wife. She was able to bring out some elements of humanity in him. And in fact, he mentioned it several times. And it was one of the reasons when he decided to kill himself at the end of, I think it was the final episode. And he was like, you need to take Ryan, and you need to go, and you need to be away from me, because if I influence him, like I'm no good. Like I'm going to darken him. And he was going to have Homelander. Well, he was going to have a face-off with Homelander, knowing he has no chance. Like he is self-aware. He knows what he is. Becca was able to bring about a spark of humanity. Becca's gone now. Not only gone once, but twice. And this time he watched it happen. I think he's going to come back worse than he was before. I think he's going to come back with a vengeance.
To me, he's going to be one of those. I don't know that it'll come back worse. I think he's one of those. He's one of those characters that isn't going to change all that much. So jumping comic book universes for a moment, Batman is a really dark character, and one of the themes that has been played with throughout different writings, different books, is that Batman needs a Robin in universe. Batman needs a Robin to balance out his darkness, and when he doesn't have that hopeful kind of ward or protege to bring up, then he gets darker and more violent and more sinister. And the concept of Batman is very dark and sinister. He is an avenging angel in a way. So having that younger kind of protege to be a light, or even be a comic relief, or something to put a little bit of brightness and lightness into that character is important. That one of the things that they did multiple times with Billy Butcher was allude to the fact that his little brother was that for him? And then they make comments about how he looked at Huey like he used to look at Lenny, I think there was even a line about there being of him being his canary, to know when it's too much, too dark, too dangerous. When he's crossing that line, he's kind of the conscience. So I think Huey will still continue to be that, because that feels like a long-term relationship that they're building in that direction for that purpose. He's kind of, different universe, different feel, different tone completely, but he's kind of the Robin to Billy Butcher's Batman.
No, I think that is an astute observation. I agree. I think Huey serves as that for Billy, but Huey left. So I think Billy's descent, in fact, we saw at the ending of the final episode, he gave Ryan up to the CIA for their protection. And so Billy's now isolated and on his own. And Huey went to go work for the Congresswoman Soup who explodes heads. And I think Billy's going to fall. I think he's going to go really, really dark. I do think it will be up to Huey to try and bring him back out of that. And I agree with your Robin Batman comparison. I think that is actually rather insightful. But I don't think that's going to happen for a little while. And I think Billy Butcher's going to earn the name.
He kind of already has.
Yeah, he has. I love that man.
This show is too much. Can we just talk for 1 minute? Probably to me, the most shocking scene ended up being a fantasy, but I didn't think it was a fantasy when it happened, and I literally had my jaw on the ground when at the rally, Homelander lost his cool and laser-eyed the whole crowd. I thought that was real too. It was just the grossest, because superhero powers are gross. If you think about how they would really play out, there's a reason they don't make a lot of rated R Wolverine movies. Superhero powers could be hideous. Superman ripping people in half and stuff is gruesome. This show does what it would really look like if people had superpowers. And that moment, we've seen Superman shoot his laser eyes how many times in every cartoon, comic book movie, Superman has done that. And it's never just a meat-filled carnage.
Right. But it's very controlled. It's at a specific target. It doesn't hurt many people. Right.
This was horrendous, and I was appalled. But I don't know why I like to be appalled by this show, but I do. The other moment where I was just completely grossed out was whenever that poor whale got impaled by the boat.
I do think that's probably the most interesting aspect of this show is when you have, when you think of superheroes, you think of people who have the mental faculties to manage their superpowers in responsible ways most of the time. Otherwise, they're deemed supervillains and the superheroes fight against them. But what if normal people with all of our failings and all of our insecurities and all of our issues, what if we suddenly have superpowers? That is terrifying. And this is an examination of that. And I love this show for that.
I don't know about if I love it, but it's definitely a different take. I would never want it to supplant my Marvel Universe or my Justice League. I just need those things to help me be inspired and live my life. But there is a morbid fascination I have with this show.
Let's talk a little bit about the real-world symbolism this series is all about. The graphic novels and the show alike express a distaste for corporate greed, superheroes as a fad, and the idolization of celebrities. Do you agree with these messages, or do you think that there's more to glean from the show?
I think this show had a lot of moments, especially this season. I don't think I noticed it as much in the previous season, but in this season where it was almost just right on the nose what it was trying to say to us about the whole being manipulated by social media, about the fascism, the dangers of fascism. There was just a whole lot that felt like in some moments it wasn't even veiled. They were just out saying, this is what's wrong with your society. Watch the show and understand that. I mean, for the most part, yeah, I agreed with all that. I don't think that it's always dangerous to have necessarily an idol, as long as you can temper it with the understanding that people are people and they're always going to have failings and they're going to have, weak moments and do bad things. And that's just okay. I guess the word idolization, it has a negative connotation for that reason. But, there's a lot of celebrities, I think, who do great things and are kind of worth looking up to for their philanthropy or for their messaging, the way that they have changed culture for the better. There's a lot of good things to look up to. So I don't know that it's always dangerous.
Dangerous is, I don't know. That's not a word I would use. Let me preface this by saying, let's say hypothetically, Jace and I disagree politically, and we disagree about some things in these schemes. I do think some of season 2 was a little on the nose. It was a little heavy-handed, and it was a little, I don't know, like where Schitt's Creek was subtle in its portrayal of certain things. Like this was a freight train hitting you head on. Like there was no question about the political messaging with some of The Boys season 2.
I mean, some of it was even like shot for shot, frame for frame of real life, and you recognize, you're like, I just saw this on the news.
Right. But I think it was also it was, well, there were some things, while I disagreed with the tenor of it, there were a lot of things I think they did really well. And there were some things I think they did even better than some blockbuster variants of the same. For instance, they made fun of some of the corporate, like, girl power propaganda that I think we see in a lot of media. They had the Girls Get It Done campaign, and everyone involved in the campaign was eye-rolling about its how it was patronizing and how it was insulting to them. Like they just wanted to do their jobs, and yet it was all about like, oh no, these are the quote girls getting it done, and like that to me was a representation of like the corporate model of pandering to those sensibilities. I think generally people agree with, yeah, girls can get it done, but there's this corporate, machine to try and monopolize on it. And we saw that in things like Avengers Endgame, in that scene in the midst of that insane battle where like all the females happened to form in a line behind a sunset, and it was like, okay. Like it was just so contrived and silly. But The Boys, ironically named, did girl power better because they had the scene where the three ladies, Starlight, Queen Maeve, and what is her, the Kimiko? What's her like super name though? It's like the female of the species, I think is.
They literally just call her the female.
Yeah. Beat the crap out of Nazi lady, Stormfront. But it's so visceral, and it makes sense in the story. All those characters are there for a good reason. They didn't just show up out of nowhere to be, the female on screen. Like they were there for a good reason. And it was a good fight. And in fact, during the fight, the three dudes who were there were not supes. And they all got their butts kicked. And they like, they're getting up from having been knocked down. And Frenchie, watching the fight, says, "Oh, whoa. Like girls really do get it done." Like watching these three beat the crap out of Stormfront. That was a girl power moment, in my layman's opinion. I'm not a girl, so I don't know.
But you didn't tell by the voice, the deep baritone. I loved the girl power moment in Marvels, and it made me squeal like a girl when I saw it. So I absolutely adored it. But I think that there is a difference between a sanitized corporate token moment and an advocacy moment. And one of the problems is people don't know the difference or can't tell the difference, even the people who are putting them together sometimes. And so when you have, say, the token, for instance, Queen Maeve was supposed to be the token gay, and it was insulting the way it was done. I mean, it didn't insult me. I'm saying in universe, it was insulting to her and to her partner. Like that, like it was obviously they were exploiting her sexuality for the purpose of advocating,
right,
LGBT rights. It was ugly, and I think that happens a lot in the real world too. Like whenever you see a commercial that's just somehow all of a sudden the rainbow flag flashes from something. Now, why was that Coca-Cola a gay commercial? I'm just not sure. I'm not opposed to representation. Obviously, I'm all for it, but there is a line between being an advocate for something and exploiting that thing for your own agenda, your own purpose. And I do think that show, that the boys really kind of pulled the veil off of that to show that difference, because it was exactly right. The Girls Get It Done was completely, they were exploiting those women for someone else's purpose, for someone else's, profit.
It reminds me a lot of the part during season 1 where they redesigned Starlight's outfit.
Yeah.
Yep. Totally.
I don't know. There's a lot that goes into the show, and a lot of it is little things like that, or not so little things, really, depending on how it's presented. But I really appreciate it, and it's a little weird, like a little bit of cognitive dissonance for me to see that just juxtaposed with like all of the gore and random things that happen in the background, like.
In the background, girl, that's right up in the foreground.
I also think though, like those things are, like all the gore and all the story, like everything is just an element of that world, and that world is, in my opinion, a satire of normal reality. Like Vought could be. Let me preface this by saying, I don't have any issue with Disney as a corporation, but let's say Vought is a satire of Disney. They have theme parks and they have superhero movies and they have like, it's Disney.
Yeah,
Like,
it's Disney, guys.
And their efforts to sanitize just awful stuff, like it seems really, really on the nose to me. But like all of that stuff goes into it. Life is complicated, and all of these things are factors in life. And I think The Boys does a really good job of satirizing some of that complication.
Well, that's why satire works, in my opinion. Satire brings to light that which we often get lost in the fog. Like the nuance that we think is in our everyday lives, satire just kicks that nuance right off the nose, and you have to come face to face with, hey, wait.
Totally.
This isn't even a joke. This is real. It's not even. It's scary sometimes. I don't want to get political either, but it's scary sometimes that when satire becomes so almost, you can't tell it apart from real life. That's how you know that you're in a very interesting and revolutionary place. And I really think that's why I like this show. It's not gratuitous in any way. Well, I don't want to say in any way. There's some gratuitousness, but it's very well utilized. The gratuitous moments are very well utilized to tell their story and to put out what I think they're trying to put out.
Homelander on top of the Chrysler building saying, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
It's a little gratuitous.
Yeah, there's certainly some moments.
Bro, I mean, in the first episode, he picks up a dude and just yeets him, and it's like a full minute delay before his body crashes down into this. And everyone's just like, wow, that was so cool. And it's like, that guy crumpled the car with the force of his impact. He's definitely dead.
Definitely dead.
And people just cheer. They love it.
The Boys Season 3 has already been greenlit, and shooting is slated to begin in the middle of next year. Unfortunately, because of COVID, shooting large-scale productions like this is difficult, so who knows when it'll actually release. But it will come out eventually. Maybe the Spice Girls will get back together. Either way, we'll cross that bridge when we burn it, and whatever they come up with, it's sure to be diabolical. It's the last tea time of 2020, fellas. Let's spill it. This week's question is, what are you guys most looking forward to over this holiday season? Last episode, we talked a little bit about what we would be doing for Halloween if it wasn't a plague year, but since we're not going to be back until 2021, might as well go ahead and talk about what we have planned for various other festivities.
I mean, let's be honest. The plague is going to color this holiday season as well. It's not like we're going to be visiting the Christmas parades and stuff. I think this is terrible because what I'm most looking forward to has zero to do with the holidays. I'm hesitant to make any plans for the holidays because, I'm worried about a surge. Texas is already, one of the top 5 states of cases in this second or third wave, whatever the hell we're in. Some people just say it's a continuation of the first. I digress. I am looking forward to literally and actually taking real time off work and binge playing Cyberpunk 2077. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Does seem like a good way to spend the winter break.
It really does. Cyberpunk's on my radar too. Let me just I haven't pre-ordered it as is. I think we both admitted to a refusal to pre-order.
Yeah, I haven't either. I'll pre-order something if I get some free swag. I'm a baby for that. Anyway, sorry.
Wait, there's a t-shirt? All right.
But I haven't pre-ordered it. Not yet. Although I'm impressed by everything I've seen. Honestly, the thing I'm looking forward to this holiday season is cold weather. I know that seems minor and silly, but I live in Texas, and Jace and I both we just don't get a whole lot of cold weather. Today, it dropped to 48 degrees, and
it did?
Oh, it was glorious.
So y'all are on the other side of that escarpment, so y'all get colder than us by a long shot.
Yeah, we're a little north of you guys. But I was okay. My wife and I met when in high school in Houston, or the Houston area. I have lived all over the world. My dad was in the Army, so I grew up on bases all over the place. I have seen winters in the negative degrees, with snow and actual winters. And I have seen summers of 100 plus degrees. My wife grew up in Texas, and so when we married, my first duty station was in Fort Benning in Georgia, which is almost like Texas with regards to heat. It's just hot. There's no real winter. It gets cold in February. And so you don't get to see a winter. And I kind of miss that. My wife hasn't really ever seen it, and our kids have never seen it either, because when I got off active duty, we were in Fort Benning, and I said, hey, we could live anywhere. We could, the world is our oyster. We could live in Italy. We could live in Ireland. We could move to Japan. We could go anywhere. And she was like, yes. And she pulled up a map of Texas. She was like, we could go anywhere.
Womp womp.
Womp womp. So we moved to Austin. And we've been here and it's like 15 years. It's the longest I've ever lived anywhere. And I'm jonesing for a winter, like a cold, snowy winter, like the kind where you could die if you're outside for too long. Like, I miss that kind of winter. But
we barely get sweater weather.
I know, man. Like, I was outside putting air in my tires, and I got chilly and was kind of shivering. And I got back in my car, and my oldest daughter was like, "What's wrong with you?" Because I was shaking, because they don't see cold weather ever. Like, they never see people react to cold weather. And I was like, "I'm cold." I was putting air in the tires. She was like, "Please." I walked like 30 feet outside, and I was fine. Like, okay. Like, it's cold, and I want it colder, and I'm looking forward to cold. But, we'll see.
I'm looking forward to more updates to Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh, amen.
And another wireless vacuum cleaner.
Tell us that story too. Now that we're recording.
So, before we started recording, we were doing the usual joking around as we waited for everyone to get settled. And I wound up talking about one of my favorite Christmas gift that I got one year. I will not say this is my favorite Christmas gift of all time, because I did get Dragon Con tickets. But one year my grandmother asked me what my favorite gift had been, and she was very disappointed with me when I told her that it was the wireless vacuum cleaner that she had gotten me. Because this thing was fantastic. I was about to go off to college. The thing weighs like no more than 5 pounds, so it's like super lightweight. It's a wireless vacuum cleaner, and you can just leave it to charge on its little charging port for like an hour, and then it's ready to go, and I could like vacuum the entire dorm. And I thought it was like the coolest little thing, and was so happy to have it because I didn't have to look for a vacuum cleaner. And she was just flabbergasted.
I, for one, have never been more appreciative of a 21-year-old grandmother than I am right now.
Okay, at the time I was actually, okay, I think I was 18. I guess
an 18-year-old grandmother.
I was 17 or 18. I don't remember which year it was.
17-year-old grandmother.
But either way, I was very excited by my very practical gift.
I tried to make a joke about the fact that you are the perfect wife for the clueless husband for the rest of your life, because that's just, it's like a comic strip joke writing itself.
Hey dear, looky here, I've got you a new vacuum. Happy birthday.
Exactly.
Now
NT
get
being
to
like,
work.
It's cordless. Awesome.
That way you can vacuum under my recliner.
Oh. No, that husband would not be happy very long.
That's fair.
But I
mean,
would
or
keep the
wife,
vacuum cleaner in divorce,
whatever.
so like that's what matters.
I'm progressive. It could be a wife, or it could be, is there your partner?
It doesn't matter who they are, though. I'm keeping the vacuum cleaner in the divorce.
I would too, to be honest. That vacuum cleaner sounds awesome. But I'm an old man, and you're not an old lady. You should not be into vacuums at your age.
I wouldn't say I'm into vacuums.
The fact that you were excited about a cordless vacuum means you're into vacuums, and it is inappropriate for a lady of your age. For old men, yeah, Jace and I, we'd love a cordless vacuum. I mean,
Yeah, no, literally, I've already ordered one since we started talking about it. I'm not joking. That is a legit truth. Amazon.com to me a new cordless vacuum.
it would make my year to have one. But, like, you shouldn't be into them too.
All right, we'll tell you what. I will trade you my cordless vacuum for your copy of Cyberpunk 2077.
I don't know about that.
All right. Well, if you would like to submit a tea time question for the podcast, or you have your own cordless vacuum cleaner that you would like to share with us, as we are apparently fascinated by them, head on over to sokengaming.org/sokenmedia and find the submission bar on the right-hand side of the page. As I said earlier, this is the Season 6 finale and the last episode for 2020. We'll be returning with Season 7 in early 2021, so stay tuned. Until then, for more Soken Media, you can visit us at sokengaming.org/sokenmedia, follow our Twitter @sokengaming, and subscribe to our YouTube, Soken Gaming Community. And look for future episodes of the podcast on Google Podcasts, iTunes, and now on Spotify. Until next time, I've been T.
I've been Jace.
I've been Leo.
And we'll see you next year.
Stay classy, Soken.
Thank you for listening to the Sokan Community Podcast. Craving more? Visit us on Twitter and YouTube @Sokan Gaming, as well as our website, www.sokengaming.com. Until next time, stay classy. Right, Jace?